President Trump is putting the pressure on his FBI and Justice Department.
A lot of people are saying they had spies in my campaign. If they had spies in my campaign, that would be a disgrace to this country. That would be one of the biggest insults that anyone's ever seen, and it would be very illegal, aside from everything else. It would make probably every political event ever look like small potatoes.
Today, the president declined to say whether he has confidence in Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. And Rosenstein is already walking a fine line as he attempts to protect the independence of the DOJ while appeasing the president and his party, who are demanding information about an FBI informant. Yesterday, an agreement was reached during a White House meeting to allow select lawmakers to review highly classified and other information connected to that source, a man who has aided Robert Mueller's probe. Point for House Republicans. Prior to that meeting, Rosenstein had already agreed to expand an inspector general investigation to look at whether the Trump campaign was, quote, infiltrated or surveilled, his words, for political purposes. Point for President Trump. But today, House Republicans made a new request. They want a second special counsel to look into misconduct at the Justice Department. So despite what could be called concessions by Rosenstein, the attacks from the GOP are not stopping. Remember, just weeks ago, the Deputy Attorney General said the DOJ would not be extorted.
There have been people who have been making threats privately and publicly against me for quite some time. And I think they should understand by now the Department of Justice is not going to be extorted. We're going to do what's required by the rule of law, and any kind of threats that anybody makes are not going to affect the way we do our job.
So our second big question today is this: how far will the DOJ be pushed to investigate Donald Trump's claims of possible spying in his campaign? Matt Sepetowski is a national security reporter for The Washington Post, and Jake Sherman is a senior political writer for Politico. Matt, based on the president's comments today, what would you say happened? Is this the DOJ rolling over? Is it Rosenstein and Wray rolling over? Or is this them just trying to, I don't know, is it a semantics argument really about whether or not they are allowing the president to get his way, or is this just something the IG would do normally?
I think this is a bit of a bureaucratic strategic maneuver on the part of the Justice Department. So as I read that statement, it sounds like they agreed to reveal some information to lawmakers, but it didn't explicitly say that they would turn over documents. They had in the past said that they would brief Devin Nunes, do sort of a classified briefing for him, and maybe this is just that. As far as the Inspector General, I don't think the DOJ views that as a completely inappropriate move. The Inspector General already had been investigating Carter Page and the applications to surveil him, and it's possible his work would have naturally led him here anyway. So I think they view that as a very, very modest concession.
So Julia Ainsley, one of our national security reporters here, said that the president does have the authority to declassify whatever he wants. So he could declassify whatever is within the DOJ that the Republicans in the House do want to see by making John Kelly a part of this and allowing John Kelly to review it. Is that an area where the president and this administration have somewhat capitulated?
Well, there's a difference between what he has the power to do and sort of what is the right thing and the normal thing to do. Certainly the president can declassify whatever he wants. He could today say all of this stuff is declassified, let's air it publicly, but this stuff is about a criminal investigation of his campaign. I think that would be deeply unsettling to leaders at the Justice Department, alum of the Justice Department, if he were to do something like that, and some would frame that as sort of an obstructive act. Here he's revealing things about a criminal investigation that the investigators don't want revealed. So certainly he has a lot of power in this respect, but he himself, much like Rod Rosenstein, does seem to be walking a line here and pushing the Justice Department, but only pushing them so much.
Well, I do want to ask you about that, because everybody says that Rosenstein is between a rock and a hard place. Yes, but if you look at all the public opinion polls out there about the Mueller investigation, about Rosenstein, the public does not want the president to fire him. The public does not want to set off a chain of events, and that does include even Donald Trump's own supporters. So is the president in kind of a rock and a hard place as well? Is his best recourse, or the one that he's using at least, just to try and tear down the credibility and stopping short of doing anything that would trigger a constitutional crisis in the way we saw during the Nixon administration?
Sure. I mean, in some ways, I think people, people at the Justice Department have said to me, well, maybe he learned his lesson with the firing of Jim Comey. You know, that really came back to bite him. That is a key component of Mueller's obstruction inquiry now. So maybe he's learned a lesson, and maybe he feels a little boxed in here. I think one of the things at play here is congressional Republicans keep making document requests, and the Justice Department keeps satisfying them in some respect. But you wonder if we'll get to a point where the Justice Department can't satisfy their requests. And is that what they're ultimately aiming for? I mean, are they sort of wanting to be rejected so they can raise a big stink about Justice Department misconduct and use that to undermine Robert Mueller's probe?
Well, Jake, let's ask you that question. Is that the point?
I don't know if it's the point, but I just, having been through this rodeo many times before, members of Congress are never satisfied with the documents they get. They always want more. They feel like they deserve everything that's in existence, everything that's on paper, because they see themselves, rightly so in some respects, as an independent branch of government, which is a check on the administration and on the executive branch. And again, to some degree, that's true. But the question that I think a lot of people are asking is, when does this stop, right? There's a request for a second special counsel. If it's not that, it's going to be more documents, as Matt said. It's going to be more. And some people think, and it has the political impact of making Jeff Sessions and the Department of Justice, which has clearly fallen out of grace with this president, makes them look bad. And if you look at the folks that were up there today calling for this second special counsel, they were people who are either ideologically close to the President of the United States or people who are personally friends with the President of the United States. I'm not impugning motive here. These are people who have been involved with oversight in the past. But remember, this House Republican conference held the last Attorney General in contempt of Congress. So this is nothing new.
Jake Sherman, Matt Zapotowski, guys, thank you very much. And joining me now is David French, senior writer for National Review, Maria Echaveste, former Deputy Chief of Staff to President Clinton, and Jennifer Rogers, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. She's also Executive Director of Columbia Law School Center for the Advancement of Public Integrity. Jennifer, is the DOJ still independent?
I think so, yes. But of course, we're getting closer and closer to that line. I think Rosenstein and Chris Wray are doing their best to hold the line. The question is, will there come a point where there is a request that is so outrageous that they have to refuse it and get fired or resign?
Is it inappropriate for the IG to be looking into this?
That's fine, actually. That's fine with me. So IGs look at a whole range of conduct, and they often take requests from Congress, referrals from Congress. So this one came through the president kind of on behalf of Congress, but it's not so unusual for a member of Congress to say, please look into that. And really anything kind of in the purview of what Department of Justice folks are doing are within the IG's jurisdiction.
So this confidential source that was within the Trump campaign, or asking questions of advisors within the Trump campaign, has been revealed. His name has been leaked. What does this sort of thing do in the future for the FBI's ability to cultivate sources?
Well, it's incredibly problematic. Obviously, sources that give information to the FBI and the CIA in this case as well expect to be kept confidential. They expect that their family will be protected if need be. All of this is a huge blow to law enforcement. There's no question about it.
Maria, what do you think of the president making this demand?
Well, I think he's doing what he does very well, which is to confuse the matter, muddy up the waters. So at the end of the day, when we finally get the results of the Mueller investigation, it will be so thoroughly discredited that no one will actually look at the facts or care about it. And it's so unfortunate. Jake said something about Congress being a check, right? Independent. Well, not in this case, because these congressional Republicans are, I expect, carrying water for Trump, and they are part of this confusion and making sure that by the time we get the real facts. I just want to say one last thing. When someone is fighting so hard to muddy up the waters and create chaos, something tells me there is something someone is hiding.
Well, let's go from that. David, the New York Times editorial board has made this point. One doesn't have to agree with the particulars of every investigation to see the fundamental difference here. The members of our law enforcement and intelligence communities are trying to protect the country. Donald Trump and his supporters are simply trying to protect Donald Trump.
Well, Donald Trump and his supporters, let me say this about his supporters. His core supporters are now firmly in the belief that this entire investigation from the outset has been politically motivated in bad faith, an investigation of nothing as an insurance policy against Trump's election. That is a core belief amongst the Donald Trump base, and that's the operating assumption of some members of Congress. And when you understand that, a lot of their actions begin to make sense. But I would disagree with a statement earlier. I think if there is a report from Mueller that has concrete evidence of wrongdoing and misconduct, especially misconduct related to collusion in the election, if there is that evidence, I know for a fact there are Republican members of Congress who are keeping an open mind on that. And that would detonate so many narratives in the Trump base that I think it would fundamentally change the conversation.
David, how do you know for a fact? I mean, I hate to be the negative Nancy here, but it seems like the goalposts have been moved quite a lot when it comes to what Republican lawmakers say they will or will not stand for.
Well, I do think that you're right. Their goalposts have moved, but it's an awful lot of the same people moving the goalposts. You know, I go back to a statement that Trey Gowdy made in the middle of the last wave of controversy over FISA-Gate. He said there would be a Russia investigation regardless of any misconduct, alleged misconduct regarding the Carter Page FISA application. There was still the Don Jr. meeting in Trump Tower. There was still the advance notice that George Papadopoulos got about incriminating emails. There are still facts out there that we don't have fully fleshed out. And I know there are Republican members of Congress who want to see that fleshed out. The Republican caucus is not actually a monolith here.
I don't disagree, but a lot of those moderate Republican members of Congress who have said these things are retiring.
True enough. So a lot depends on the timing of the release of Mueller's report, whenever it comes. But I do think that what we're seeing right now is an awful lot of flailing by partisans. And then if and when that report comes, or we'll say when that report comes, or when a much more definitive accounting of the 2016 election comes, I think that some of the more serious voices, and maybe I'm wildly optimistic here, you can replay this tape later and discredit my optimism. I think some more serious voices can come forward then and weigh in on the basis of facts and evidence and not on the rampant speculation that is dominating commentary about Russia.
In talking about rampant speculation, let's just make a point about Loretta Lynch and President Bill Clinton during the 2016 campaign when he went on the tarmac and then into her plane for a brief meeting. I know the president is the president now, but are the circumstances much different? I mean, there was all this shade thrown at Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch saying that he was trying to influence the investigation into Hillary Clinton at the time, which was still open. This is the president meeting with Rod Rosenstein, demanding an investigation be done into the investigation into him.
Right, and here's another difference, right? Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch both insisted that they didn't talk about that at all.
And Donald Trump saying, yeah, no, I told them to do what they're doing.
Exactly, and him saying that I was wearing my president hat and not my subject of a criminal investigation hat. First of all, that's not true because Rudy Giuliani essentially admitted as much when he said the legal team wanted the document. But also, you can't just be wearing your president hat. It's also inappropriate for a president to get information about a criminal investigation, even if it doesn't involve the president. So on so many levels here, this was inappropriate.
Somebody keeps saying yes. Who keeps saying yes?
This is Maria. It's just like, it's absolutely the lines that have been crossed in terms of the relationship between the White House and a criminal investigation, the Department of Justice. It's mind-boggling. And I just hope that the members of Congress, I wish I was as optimistic, but that people remember those who have took the oath of upholding the Constitution will remember their obligation is to the people of this country, to our country, not to an individual who seems to discard all the rules that you're supposed to as President of the United States.
Maria Echaveste, Jennifer Rogers, and David French. Guys and ladies, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a reporter